just kind of going back to some other, I guess, frequent, maybe not frequent so much as things to really pay attention to ensure efficiency as you're filling bottles. The seals and gaskets on the filler spouts here do have a tendency, because of having constant wine pushed through, being steam treated, getting cold water, just a lot of the temperature changes. These seals here, this rod actually drops down out of this tube. There's actually a rod that fits up inside here, and I can drop that down for you. And that's done by pushing a button up top here. And this rod drops out. This seal or gasket here is what seals this rod up against this tube for the vacuum. The vacuum pulls this up tight and doesn't allow fluid to leak out or overfill a bottle. These seals have a tendency, like I said, because of the constant temperature changes, the cleaning solution, wine, steam, cold water, hot water, tend to harden and crack, and then they become almost like a piece of plastic instead of rubber. And what that does, it affects the seal. And then you're going to lose vacuum, you're going to overfill bottles, and that's going to more or less violate your QC checks when you run those bottles to the client. You know, the bottle's overfilling, say it's just one spout, or maybe it's one here and one on the other side. You're going to have to pay attention to those and want to get those changed. And usually if you change one, you want to just go ahead and change them all, because there's a good chance there's probably 3, 4, 5, maybe all of them are shortly to follow. So if I change one, I'll change them all. And since you're tearing it apart already, it's a good idea just to take the whole spout off and check these these gaskets or rubber seals that are in here, like this one or this darker one up top here. And we do keep all of those extra parts on hand in the tool cabinet up in the front of the trailer. So if you are at a bottling, you're on the road and you need to change those out, we have the parts on board to do that. So that's one thing to pay attention to, and these do happen rather quickly. So I'll usually check these after bottling and make sure if they need changed, I'll change them out before the next bottling, so I'm not doing it halfway through, or recognize the problem before it's too late, or after it's too late, sorry. In order to get that back up in there, just apply pressure, push the button up top, and put it in there and release, hold it, and let it go. And you're obviously, we've covered everything as far as closures and kind of how we bypass everything if we are dealing with a bottle that is already filled with liquid and has a closure on it. One thing to pay attention to that can affect, because if you notice here, we don't have a guide. Some questions that we get are, how do you keep bottles from tipping over one side or the other? One way to do that is to make sure, and this applies to when you're filling the bottles with liquid too, with wine, is to make sure that your trailer's level. It's important just because if the trailer's on a slate, the front end is dipped down too low or it's tipped up too high, it can affect timing. It can cause bottles to tip just because of gravity. If it hits, say the trailer nose is tipped up too high, as it spits out here, that bottle may, as it spits it out, and that track's continuing, the track never stops. It slows down when it hits the wheel, but as the bottle comes out, that vertical bottle may, as the track catches it, if the nose is too high, may tip it back a little bit and cause it to kind of weeble wobble. And then as it regains itself, it may be shaking enough to hit one of these. Or as it enters the star wheel and may hit, if it's still teetering, the bottom may hit first before the top catches, and then it may hit this track and tip over. And the same down for the label side. So you just want to make sure that your trailer's level, which obviously we have a level on board to double, triple, quadruple check if you feel you need to. And that helps with when you're filling bottles too. especially with screw caps, because that hopper is those capsules are fed via frequency, and those capsules may not work their way all the way to the top, as they should if the trailer's not level. If it's tipped back or it's tipped forward, they may not feed correctly, and then you'll get empty space here in the track where you may not get capsules. They may get jammed up top. They may be stuck in the hopper, not feeding properly because the trailer's tipped and not level. Same with down on the labeler. The trailer's tipped one way or the other. As the bottle's fed through there, labels may not apply straight and as clean as they should. And so those are just a couple things to pay attention to, and kind of important factors as to why you want to ensure that your trailer's level. This one's fairly simple. This is the nitrogen sparger here. It's very seldom, just because we keep the nitrogen generator up in the front left corner of the trailer at a certain level. For this it can get clogged. If for whatever reason you're doing a lot of starting and stopping of the McBrady, and it's causing a lot of back pressure on the nitrogen line, which is what this does. It sparges nitrogen into the bottle. When you do restart the machine or restart the track, if there's a bottle sitting here, it can kick out an extra strong sparge of nitrogen, which will cause a backwash of line that can get up into this tube. And if it sits long enough and dries, it can clog this up. So you want to make sure you clean this out. That's important. And one other thing too is, depending on the power source of the location you're at, what may or may not be going on with it. If you're having power issues or air compressor issues or whatever the case may be, this may not be pushing enough nitrogen out. And you'll be able to tell if it's working because the solenoid will click, or if it's clicking and nothing's coming out, you need to go over to the dial on the nitrogen generator, turn your dial up a little bit stronger to kick some more nitrogen out, to the point where you can feel the slight, call it a breeze, kicking out of that spout there. That's just one extra thing to pay attention to. It often gets overlooked during setup. You can usually check that during your test bottle portion when you're setting up for bottling. That senses that there is a open or a bottle with a closure or no closure. If it's a bottle where cork was missed or cork didn't go in, it would sense that there's nothing there filling that space, so everything would stop, and it would show up an error message on the screen. If it is cork, it just senses and it allows the machine to keep going.
The hole of the needle is into the headspace, and what we're shooting for is for this needle to be below 0. So right now it is at 1, which is telling us that our corking vacuum is not pulling correctly, which means we have to go back and make some adjustments to the corking vacuum.
I know why. Just trying to suck the film out?
No, it doesn't know there's a bottle there. You got your flipper pulled back?
Yeah, but I set it in up here.
Yeah, just hold that flipper back when we put the bottle through. Like, you can flip it back to auto. So what Josh is holding open right now is a bottle counter. So it's tracking that bottle through the entire stage. So if that isn't triggered, nothing beyond that point is going to know that there's a bottle in that spot. So no bottle is going to come through. So no spout will open, no vacuums will engage, no nitrogen will inject.
It's like a furnace on a pedestal. And if you leave it in there too long, if you get jammed up and you leave it in there, it'll start to melt this. And I've actually caught it on fire once before.
Whoa. Catch corks on fire. If you forget, like if you step on the trailer and a bottle got jammed in there, look at how enough will make the bottle explode.
So with these roller heads, which you'll put on for the polylaminate capsules, in order to adjust the tension or loosen it up on these, they have these these thick rubber bands on here that can be slid up or down. I'm not going to move them now just because they're where they need to be. And this just allows these pins, you see run from the top down here, to either close tighter or open more at the bottom. You can tension up the bottom, you can tension up the top, you can make it consistent throughout. And that's just something you'll notice as they apply the polylaminate capsules. If they're tearing or ripping or just not sealing tight enough, you can adjust those. I want to go over it's fairly simple, but filling these hoppers, both the corker hopper and the screw cap. The corker hopper here, the only thing you're going to dump in there are corks. And it's as easy as cutting your bag open and tipping the bag over the top and dumping them right in. And we have mirrors installed on the ceiling here so you can see down inside the hopper, just to kind of keep an eye on it, see when it's getting low. As it gets low, you want to make sure you've got another bag staged ready to dump in there, and that's really it for the corks. The screw caps are a little bit more tedious. You bring your box of screw caps in here into the trailer with you, and you want to keep a constant eye on those. Screw capping is quite a bit faster than corking, so those closures do run out faster. They do deplete faster, so you want to keep an eye on that. Again, you can check the mirror on the ceiling to see inside that hopper. General rule of thumb, as soon as you can see the metal bottom of this hopper, as you can see now, as soon as you can see just a little bit of it, you want to go ahead and take this scoop that we have here, dip it into the box of capsules. All you need is one scoop. If it's been 10 minutes, you forgot to check it, and it's running quite a bit low, put 2-3 scoops in there. You don't want to overfill it. It can cause feed issues. Again, these are fed via air and vibration. If it's overfilled, if they're not going to work their way up that corkscrew inside properly. So you really just want to cover the bottom. Make sure the bottom's covered with capsules. If it's running low and you forgot a scoop or two, and you have to put 2 or 3 in there, dump one, wait for it to kind of work its way up the corkscrew. If you can see the bottom of the hopper, dump another one in, wait the same. If you can still see the bottom, dump one more in. Again, that's just kind of something you play by ear. You watch it as you go, and adjust accordingly. Really fairly simple, but you want to make sure you monitor both of those and have your supplies on hand ready to refill if needed. All right, so with the screw cap feed tray here, there is this arm that you can pull out and push back and shift left to right. And this again kind of plays into making sure your trailer's level on how these capsules feed. As you can see right now, this is fairly parallel. It may even be tipped towards the front of the trailer a little bit, which is going to cause these capsules just to kind of float and hover instead of getting gravity fed down the tray. And that can be changed simply raising the front of the trailer, or you can shift this arm up. And that's done by loosening this lever, raising it up, and tightening it back down. And one common issue that we do run into, again, could be because of the level of the trailer, or if it's not level, is when these capsules feed from this exposed tray to this enclosed tray. If it's too far away, we'll say, what can happen, you can't really see it here, but what can happen is as it drops down, let me lower this, I'll kind of show you. If it's too far down, it may come in sideways, and this whole thing is vibrating the entire time these are getting fed. It may come in sideways and vibrate and fall right out like that. And that's where you'll want to kind of make little small minor adjustments, whether it's moving it closer, tightening it down, or raising it up, tightening it down. However you need to do it, there's no golden rule or magic solution for it. It's just minor manipulation, getting it lined up the way you need it. And even the vibration from this, vibrating all day long, these capsules inside of there can cause it to shift, even if you have it lined up correctly. May run flawlessly for a couple thousand bottles and then slowly start to drift. You'll just have to stop it and go back in and just kind of bump it, tighten it back down, and start it over again. One part of the whole system here that looks, I guess, more complicated than it actually is getting these rollers or these labels routed. It looks fairly complex. First couple times I did it, it was a head scratcher. There are diagrams posted on both stations 1 and 2 to help you. First couple times, once you do it a handful of times, it becomes brainless and super easy. You don't even have to think about it. Not to say you don't want to double and triple check, make sure it's routed correctly. These particular labelers are set to accept what we call a number 4 or a number 8 style roll of labels. So if you have a client that asks you, they're getting ready to order their labels for a bottling, they want to make sure they're getting all their materials for you staged and ready ahead of time. They'll ask you, what style labelers do you have? Which direction do your labels come off? You tell them we can accept a number 4 or a number 8. And all that really is if you're looking at the label, as you face it, the left side of the label is the leading edge. So as long as they're rolled accordingly, we can take that roll of labels. So this is set up as a number 4. This is set up just as the diagram shows. A number 8 is basically backwards. And all that does is it just takes a simple reroute. Instead of coming from this side, it will unroll from this side and it will wrap the same way. It's a little confusing until you see it, but those are common questions that I get from clients. How do your labels unroll? How does your labeler accept rollers or labels? Which direction should they come off? And so on and so forth. One other common issue we run into because of the adhesive on the back of the labels, that adhesive can tend to build up on one thing that Ethan was going over was the blade here. We call this the blade. Adhesive from these labels can build up on the blade. If you do have hiccups with the air compressor and the thing stalls or it kind of hiccups, shutters for whatever reason based on your power issues, it's being fed to the trailer. Labels can kind of get jammed up in here on a bottle and you'll have to kind of reset, pull that label off. If these labels crumple up when it does that, pieces of label can build up on here, adhesive can build up on there. If you notice on these rollers here, kind of some old worn adhesive on here, same thing, builds up and sticks to these. You want to make sure that you get those cleaned up so it doesn't continue to build up. If you leave that stuff on there, it'll cause problems in the future. And that really covers everything with the labels, just some common things to look out for, common questions that are asked, and ways to address them. And then there is actually a third labeler, and this is primarily used for neck labels, whether it's special vintage or restaurant lines that we're distributing, or whatever the case might be. It'll take a small, like a vintage sticker or even like a collar or something like that. This is a label that'll apply those. Again, there's a diagram that shows you how to set it up. And before we get too far into it, should let you know that we don't use this quite as much as I originally thought I would when I started running the trailer. We've since kind of taken a different route with the special vintage stickers and whatnot. But the way this works, and it's a little bit more complicated than, well, quite a bit more complicated than setting this up. There are numerous moving parts to get this adjusted to set just right. One is timing. These labels are applied at the same time. The main labels, the body labels, are applied down here. Just as below, there's a blade and a backstop. This one is a sponge, and that's a sponge just to keep a soft backing for that bottleneck, to keep any potential tipping, teetering, tottering of the bottle or breakage of the neck of the bottle from happening. And that label is spit out the same way between this backstop and the blade. And that's really it for the neck label. Again, we hardly ever use it, but just kind of so you know, it is here. There's a diagram on how to route those labels on there. And again, it is based on timing, just as the stations below. And one other thing too with these neck labels is you want them lined up with the front label that's applied to the body of the bottle. And that takes a little bit of adjustment up top here. And there are numerous adjustments. You push the blade out, you can raise the whole thing up, you can tip it back, side to side. All of these arms extend, collapse, shift, move forward and backwards. A lot more moving parts on this one than there are below. But again, we don't use it quite as often. But just so you know that there is a third station, and there are numerous ways to set this up. It is based on timing, and again, it is fairly easy to set up, as there is a diagram just as the stations below.
So just one more main spot to check for maintenance on the labeler. The roller that spools up the backing paper is driven by this rubber pulley belt. And that's just something to visually inspect and make sure there's no rips or tears on it. Make sure it has decent tension, it's not overly stretched out, and we have extras of those in the trailer if they need to be replaced as well.
And then underneath the tray that holds the spool of labels, we have these sensors here. These arms tend to break over time. If those are broken, it causes a disruption in your feed on the labels up front, whether it feeds too many labels or it only feeds one and it's supposed to feed two. So you want to check these periodically too. It's just a simple aluminum arm or steel arm. I'm not sure what type of material it is. Regardless, it breaks over time. And again, we keep a handful of these on board too. So as simple as unplugging and plugging it back in.
So occasionally we'll bottle for a client that uses a cap or a capsule that's larger than the standard. So this is a standard, it's a 30 by 60. If the client has a cap that's bigger, we have to swap up this cup here. So just a simple 5 mil Allen. And then this guy will slide right out. And the only thing that you need to do, so we keep the larger size in the toolbox. It has this little metal spring which holds the capsule in the cup. You just remove that, it just slides underneath that band, slide it into the new one, and then simply reinstall. It just sits fully in there. There's no real orientation that this slides in there, just gets in until it sits in the collar. We usually turn it face down and simply tighten it back down. When you do swap to a larger capsule size, you do also have to resize the dispenser. Here at the the face, you can see right now, that's the diameter of the capsule that we're using, and that's the length of the capsule. So there's two arrows pointing where we're needing. If you do need to change it, this is the unlock lever. You just twist that, it removes the tension, and then there's a knob on the top. You can twist it, and you can see it's either going up or down. And then same thing, this one's kind of hard to see, but inside there's a little black knob as well. And twisting that will change the length from longer to shorter. So just something you have to play around with in your settings when you're putting new capsules in to see which is the right sizing for the capsule that you're going to be using. But that's how you do it. Really simple, just two little knobs to turn. Alright, occasionally you'll have a label and backing paper combination that for some reason the eye isn't picking up clearly. So these two sensors here are basically the brains of the eyes. So you have station 1 and station 2. So there is like a simple reset you can do for resetting the sensitivity. So you simply up top put the backing paper only of the label spool inside the eye, and then simply press the set button and it'll reset to read that style of backing paper. So whether it's going from, if you had the label set before was like a clear backing label and then you switch to a brown paper, it'll probably throw off the sensitivity. So simply put your new backing paper in the eye, press set, and you should be good to roll.
So in front of each section of the machine and the overheads, we have all of our change parts that are going to go on here, with star wheels or plates for the closure heads here. Let's see. At the top there, we've got our guides and all of our star wheels. Those are all pertinent to this side. And then same in the overheads up here. Again, star wheels, guides, and everything in these overheads pertinent to this side of the machine. And then if you can see on the far side over there, we have all of our extra filters. Anything that goes to the manifold down there is all going to be in those overheads.
So here we have our built-in toolbox, top drawer, every tool that we need on the trailer, whether it's the exercise cups, your scale for tensioning the Zulkin head, you've got extra hoses, extra fittings, extra little gas lines. Here are the fuses for the capsule vibrator. If those blow, we have plenty of extra fuses. Again, more gaskets, new ink cartridges, bottom drawer where we keep the change parts for whether you're doing PVC or polylam. Moving over again, replacement fill spouts if you get a damaged spout, more air lines, just kind of miscellaneous. You have tool for removing the jaws, you have calipers, extra extension hoses, extra fuses again, and then just miscellaneous paperwork and excess space.